Good evening and welcome to Transition Talks Tuesdays. This is the January 24, heading into spring 24 edition in partnership with Columbus School District Transition Program. But what we talk about is applicable for many, many families, and that's especially true tonight. We welcome in Family Voices of Wisconsin. They have a presentation called What's After High School? It's almost everything you need to know about the transition to adult life for youth and disabilities. I love starting Transition Talks Tuesdays off with What's After High School because it gives us an idea of all these different areas that we can concentrate on. And in the next few weeks, we're going to bring in some experts. We're going to talk about some of these topics, but not all of them, because transition is a huge topic. And so two of my friends from Family Voices of Wisconsin is here, Lynn and Danielle. I will go ahead and just turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. So welcome to What's After High School. And this is going to be a broad overview of the transition to adult life for youth with disabilities or special health care needs. I'm Danielle Tolsman, co-director of Family Voices of Wisconsin. I'm also a mom to a young adult with multiple diagnoses. So it wasn't that long ago that our family experienced this transition to adulthood ourselves. And I meant to share that because I may mention him a few times as we go along tonight. Um, Lynn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Lynn Renner. I work with Danielle and a few others at Family Voices. And like Danielle, I just experienced this. I have a 22-year-old, and you'll probably be hearing about my son as well. So we know how complex this is and how many things you're juggling as your child is turning 18. So we're hoping this will help you just to get a sense of what you'll be experiencing. So Danielle, I will pass it back to you.
Thanks, Lynn. If you'd go ahead with the next slide, please. So a little about us. Family Voices of Wisconsin is an affiliate of National Family Voices. We serve as Wisconsin's HRSA-funded family-to-family health information center. We are also part of the statewide Wisconsin network serving children and youth with special health care needs, which is supported by the state's Title V program. And our work is really focused in three areas. One is that we develop easy to understand information for families through newsletters, fact sheets, and learning sessions, just like this one. We provide family leadership opportunities, mentoring, and support. And we're involved in systems change and public policy initiatives. We've been doing this work for a little over 25 years. So this is a kind of a large overview of the topics we'll be talking about relating to the transition to adulthood. We'll be going over decision making, including how there are legal status changes that happen at age 18 and what that can look like. When we get to the part on long-term supports and healthcare, we'll talk about private health insurance, public health insurance, and some of the programs that can support our kids as adults once they sort of age out of children's programs. Then we'll talk about what you can expect to change as far as school and education, including vocational programs. And then we'll sort of wrap up with a short living and working in the community and a little bit about what that might look like. I also want to say we'll be packing a lot into this short presentation tonight. So if there's anything that we're talking about that's of interest, certainly let Tim know or your local host there know. And again, we also have a resource guide that's going to help all of you dig a little deeper into these topics. And just in case, that guides also can be found on our website at familyvoiceswi.org. So to get us started, transition or the transition to adulthood really touches every part of our child's life. Of course, it begins with each individual child. One's skills can develop continually from the day they're born and continue throughout the lifespan. Transition skills can begin when a child is very young and will continue to develop and build way past the age of 18. So this learning session really provides that high-level overview of different areas that transition touches on, including school, community, healthcare, public benefits. As we go through this, you'll see that some of these topics are age dependent and some are areas to consider over the next many, many years. And they can also be revisited every few years. So your child's age gives an indication of where you can begin thinking about and planning for transition. To begin with, and again, this can happen at any real age and can be revisited periodically. Talk with your child about their interests, both current and things that they might want to try. A reality is that many of our kids might not know how to answer this when asked about dreams and interests. And especially then for those who are non-speaking, remember you can take your non-verbal cues from them. What makes them laugh? What makes them smile? Do they seem to prefer to be with others or alone? Do they need quiet or do they prefer a busy, active environment? All of these clues can lead us to help them to think about what might be good areas to begin exploring for employment. The year that your child turns 14 is the time to formally add transition goals to your child's IEP at school. You might need to ask and advocate to include skill development in social and community areas, and that's totally appropriate. If it's not there, ask for it. And finally, try to identify a process where you are going to keep all of your notes written or electronic, because there's going to be quite a bit of planning and correspondence. So keeping organized at this point will save you a lot of time and, well, potential headaches looking back for things later on. You can use an online tool like a Google Drive or a good old paper binder with tabs. Use whatever method works best for you. The key message here, though, is to think about a method of organization that's going to work for you and start keeping track of things. So next we'll talk about some important dates to remember, some timelines. Not all transition activities include dates that action needs to occur on, but some do. This is a good review of some of those key dates to remember. And this will be a fairly quick run through, but you will have these slides to refer back to. And if you're watching this on a different screen, feel free to take a screenshot, pull out your camera, take a picture. At ages about 14 to 21, as I mentioned before, formal IEP transition planning at school begins the year your child turns 14. Special education services can sometimes continue until the year your child turns 21. So, for example, if your child turns 21 in October, then those services continue through the end of that school year. If your kiddo turns 21 in July or August, well, then special education services end the June before they turn 21. Really understanding when school will end is important to know when you start thinking and planning for what is going to come next after school. At age 17 and a half, you're going to want to connect with your county ADRC, or Aging and Disability Resource Center. They provide great information on adult services in your community. They'll connect you to determination offices to see if your child is eligible for some different things like Social Security and long-term support programs like Family Care or IRIS. More on those, I think, in a moment. Some ADRCs have transition specialists that work with just youth in transition. That's all they do. I should also add that for families currently in CLTS, or the Children's Long-Term Support Program, your support and services coordinator might do a warm handoff and essentially bring someone from the ADRC with them when they come for their regular visit, just to kind of start that introduction and that planning. Age 18 in Wisconsin, well, a lot changes when someone turns 18, regardless of if they have a disability. Suddenly, your 18-year-old can vote, get married, serve on a jury, serve in the military, enter into contracts, including credit cards and loans, and all kinds of other things. So at this age, it's also a good reminder to consider applying for supplemental security income, or SSI, at this time. And remember that even if your child is receiving it as a child, they will need to reapply the month that they turn 18, because the eligibility criteria is different for children and for adults. And then we'll move next to decision making, and Lynn will take us here for a little bit.
Thank you, Danielle. As Danielle talked about, a lot changes legally at age 18. I think for many of us, that was kind of a surprise. I know it was for me when we've been caring for our child all these years, and things don't really change between the day before he was 18 and the day he's 18. But in the law, in statutes, there is a big change. So all parental rights end. And that's why many people need to think about supported decision-making agreements or other supported decision-making tools like guardianship. So as we will talk about, that there are a lot of tools that are options in Wisconsin. But I think what Danielle talked about is that this is really, transition can start at any time, and decision-making skills can also grow and change, and you can work with your child on decision-making and choice-making from a very early age. One of the online on-demand trainings that we have is called Early Choices Matter. And that was developed really because we heard that adults with disabilities felt like they didn't necessarily have the experiences of typically developing children or young adults. And so it's a way to help, whether it's elementary or middle school or high school age youth with disabilities, thinking about how to make choices and how to make those decisions so that they're ready at age 18. So I guess this slide says, really, our laws in Wisconsin presume that people are competent to make their own decisions. And it's really not, and again, I think it surprises many of us that it's not really the quality of the decision. I mean, I know there are many who have teens and they don't necessarily agree with their choice making or their decisions, but it's really, can they understand the information needed to make those decisions? Can they understand the outcomes or the consequences? And do they have a way to express their decisions? So that's, kind of something to keep in mind. So I really like this graphic, which is a part of the Board for People with Developmental Disabilities and their supported decision-making toolkit. And Tim, I think you can put that link into the chat, and that also is a part of our resource list that I will be sending to you guys, or that Tim will. And so really, if you think about all of the tools that are available for a young person with a disability, we kind of move from less restrictive, less limiting to more limiting. So on the far left, we could think about a release of information form, and I'm sure many of us have done that at our bank or for school or at the healthcare clinic. There is, and that's something that you can do with your young adult, to have them sign a release of information so that you can talk to their doctor, help them make appointments, and things like that. The next, kind of going up to a little more limiting, is a fairly new legal tool. I think it was 2018 that it passed in Wisconsin, called a supported decision-making agreement. And again, you don't have to go to court, and you don't need an attorney to complete it. That's something that, again, if you go to that BPDD website, they can give you more information about that. So that's another way where, again, your person, your young adult, will continue to be the decider, but they will be asking for support. If we keep going, representative payee is actually something through SSI. It's something that I have for my son. And then kind of going on the continuum, the next is a power of attorney. So that is a legal document, although you don't need an attorney, you don't go to court. And that's a legal form that can be completed so that you can assist in making some of those medical or financial decisions. And then finally, the most restrictive option is guardianship. I would say it takes a lot of doing, as some of you may know. There's now actually a new, as of the beginning of 2023, there is a training requirement before you can go to court. So that you actually do this 3 or 4 hour online training. You complete all the modules, you complete an evaluation, and then they will send you a certificate that you can then share with your circuit court before you can before the judge will work with you to process the guardianship. So I think, and I realize I kind of rushed through a lot of this, but we actually have a separate training called Thinking About Supported Decision Making, and that's something you can, go onto our website and we'll have a lot more deeper information about this topic. But really, I think what's important is, how do I decide what's best for my family? And I think really what we would say is take your time, and do your research and talk to other families and think, find out from them, if it was a supported decision-making agreement, or if it was guardianship, how did that work for them? And, talk to your youth, find out their understanding of it and their feelings about it. And really, you can always move to the more restrictive, but it's a lot harder. Like, for example, if you went through the court system and did a guardianship, it's really hard to go back. So, we would just suggest, start with a least restrictive tool. And then if you feel like that's not working, move up into the more restrictive options. So maybe I should pause. I don't know if there are questions that I can answer, or Tim, I don't know if you want to take those questions at the end.
We can do whatever you're most comfortable with. Feel free, if you have a question, you can put it into the chat, or you can feel free to mute yourself and I will call on you and let you know that you have been identified as someone who has been unmuted, and then you can ask your question. So those are the 2 ways that you can ask your questions in the chat. And I have been trying to keep up, but I know I'm not capturing everything, but we will send out the resource guide from Family Voices at the end of this, probably by the end of the week. Any questions?
All right, well, maybe I will just plow ahead because we do have a lot to get through in the next half hour. So the next topic is healthcare and long-term supports. And I think we all know that for many of our kids and other family members, we see the doctor, we need to go to the hospital periodically, and we have to make sure that we have health coverage. And really there are a lot of options, and things will most definitely change at age 18. So, for my family, we've always had both private insurance and public insurance. So I can speak from experience that it was very helpful to have both. If we're talking about private insurance for a young adult, they can, at age 18, go to the marketplace, go to healthcare.gov and look for an affordable plan. They can consider if they're going to a university or college, that there are some university plans. If they are working, they may have access to an employer plan. And then the other important piece is that for those of us who have private insurance, our children, and this is because of the ACA, Affordable Care Act, that our children can stay on our plan until age 26. So even if they're not living at home, even if they have employer coverage or, any number of things, they can stay on our plan. The other thing that we did for my son is that there are some private plans that have what's called a disabled dependent provision, so that we had to go through, we had to see the doctor, we had to get the doctor's, a letter from my son's doctor and fill out lots of paperwork. But the employer said, yes, we verified that he is disabled under the, SSI, and that he can now stay on our plan beyond age 26. So that's something that I didn't know about till recently. If we talk about public insurance, we were talking about Medicaid and Medicare, and Medicaid can be called by definitely different names: Badger Care, SSI Medicaid, and I mean another good option for those who want to work is called Medicaid Purchase Plan, or MAP. So that's a way to buy into Medicaid for those with disabilities who have a slightly higher income and have higher assets. So the other important piece, as we're thinking about how do we get the things covered that our children need, is to think about long-term supports. And those kind of globally are called Medicaid home and community-based waivers, because they're paid for by Medicaid, but our state has gotten a waiver to the flexibility to pay for other things. So my child was on CLTS, and then he moved to IRIS. So again, at age 18, that's typically what you need to do is to work with your Aging and Disability Resource Center, as Danielle talked about, and they can help you apply and move from either CLTS to an adult program, or for the first time being covered and enrolled in either family care, which is again it's a managed care plan, and IRIS, which is more self-directed. Let's see, I may skip over some of this. So, transition also is thinking about moving from pediatric to adult healthcare providers. So for many of us, that meant, if you saw a pediatrician, that could either be at age 18 or age 21. But really the best thing is to talk to your child's primary care provider and find out, do they need to transition? And when does the provider need you to do that? And hopefully they will also have some names of adult providers who they recommend. I know for my son, he sees lots of UW specialists. So again, at age 18, we moved from a children's neurology clinic to the adult, from a children's or PGI to adult. So there was certainly a lot of new appointments, new providers, and a lot to do, a lot of paperwork. The other thing that I think I was surprised about is that there is, primarily at either at age 18 or 21, if your child is hospitalized, they no longer will be able to be seen at one of the children's hospitals. So I know personally that was a huge change, right? That was from a more friendly, kind of family-centered feel being at the children's hospital to an adult hospital where it's just yeah, I don't know. It's still good, but it's definitely very different. So the other piece to think about with healthcare is that portable medical information. And do you have emergency plans? Do you have medical summaries? It's something maybe you want to get, if you haven't already, a medical alert bracelet for your young adult, because likely they'll be out in the community more and not with you as much. And then finally, with healthcare, it's really, like decision making. It's really just working with your young adult on that skill building. So it may be, You know, maybe you get an alert on your phone for doctor's appointments. Well, maybe you can put that on your child's cell phone so that they also get that alert and they know about that doctor's appointment. Maybe you can, you know, they can come with you to pick up your medications, and maybe they can be the one to refill their meds, or to, you know, go up to the counter. So just all of those things really it can start very young, or, you know, whenever you feel like it's appropriate. To just help them to develop those more independent skills related to healthcare. So next we will talk about education, and I will give it back to Danielle.
Thanks, Lynn. And of course, if anyone has questions, feel free to hop in or drop them into the chat, use the raise hand, whatever works well for you. But in the interest of time, I think that for now we're going to I'll keep rolling ahead. Next slide, Lynn, please. So in planning what's coming next for our kids, starts at age 14 at school. And if it's one tool that the IEP team uses in this planning is the PTP, the Post-Secondary Transition Plan. And the PTP talks about life after high school. And you'll want to look at that to assess, are there opportunities to advocate for community-based things, activities? Are there social and recreational opportunities? Our daily living skills to work towards independence on the radar there. I mean, the ultimate goal is a full and meaningful life, right? So for that to happen, we all need to prepare, build skills that are going to be needed to practice new situations that our kids might encounter. And again, remember too, when our kids turn 18, that there is that transfer of rights that happens, moving the authority from the parent to the student. And schools recognize this too. So they might need a release of information to be signed by the student to talk to you about how things are going. That was something that surprised me. Next slide. Thanks. And so many families think about continuing high school after senior year. There are transition programs for students from age 18 to 21. By the way, students can still participate in graduation ceremonies with their peers, but remember the special education ends with a diploma or a certificate of completion. So they can still go through the ceremony when their peers graduate and get that folio, but perhaps there isn't anything in it just yet. So that's an important distinction between participating in a ceremony and actually receiving a diploma. So what if there are unmet IEP goals after the 12th grade? Well, all of the things that are listed here can happen during that 18 to 21 timeframe, including more practice and building life skills and having social experiences and opportunities. So I'll be quick here, but for anyone that is homeschooling or attending a private school, the steps could be just a little bit different. Now, when I say homeschooling, I'm not referring to the online public schools. I'm talking about home education programs that are totally separate from any public school system. So I'll just go through this quickly in case there's anyone watching this on a recording. Why we raise this is that when parents are the teachers, they need to develop sort of their own PTP or transition plan about the same age of 14. That whole process of what happens after school gets our kids thinking about their areas of interest and how that could translate into an employment role or continuing education in college. There's an opportunity here to start working with our kids on making decisions about small things, like Lynn mentioned earlier, so that our kids can ease into making decisions about big things a little later. Since the public school won't be connecting you to DVR, the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, you'll want to proactively call them. This was the case for my family. I homeschooled our son through high school. So for me, when I called, they were initially kind of dismissive and said, oh, the school will get us connected. I had to be a little persistent about the fact that no, actually, for our case, the school won't be doing that because we homeschool. Well, then they understood and things got going. And I'll talk more in a moment about what you can expect from DVR. Of course, it's important to continue these social experiences, but especially as our kids get closer to becoming adults, here are some ideas for where your teen can continue to have social interactions with new people when you're homeschooling. Okay, DVR, the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Every
It's actually
county.
division,
Oh,
sorry,
thank you.
Danielle. Yeah, they're
Okay.
a part of it. They're in a department, but they are the division of vocational rehab. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. Well, that's important. Thanks, Lynn. The Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. So every county has a DVR office. Usually your students' involvement with DVR starts about age 16 or within a year or two of when they're expected to graduate. Your counselor, your DVR counselor, by the way, can attend IEP meetings. Their role really is to support people, by the way, through their lifetime. So this isn't just a teens or a young adult program. Some of the things that DVR can help with include career counseling, looking at interests, skill development, job searches. And by the way, for many of these things, they don't necessarily do these activities, but they do pay for them. For example, my son for a long time had a job coach and transportation to work that was actually paid for by DVR. Now it's covered by the IRIS program, which Lynn mentioned earlier. But that's just an example of what DVR can do. So when it comes to college, things are different than in middle school or high school. Um, IDEA or IEPs are not used in college. Most colleges, though, do have an Office of Disability Services or something similarly titled that can help students get accommodations like note taking. But again, there is not an IEP in college. In order to utilize those services in college, students need to meet a set standard, which can vary a bit depending on where your student goes. It's also true, and I can't stress this enough, your student needs to request the accommodations. They aren't automatic. They need to be sought out and they need to be requested. So this is where those self-advocacy skills they've been practicing are really going to be helpful. And I'll pause just for a second. Any questions on that last part? I'll give it my best. Okay. Well, we're in the home stretch. When it comes to working in the community, there's several options. So you can, together with your soon-to-be adult, see what you think is going to be the right place to start. And I do say start because starting at one doesn't mean that's where they will always want to be. The level of support at each of these environments varies. So perhaps as more or less support is needed, they can kind of move between them and have different experiences. The first listed here is in community integrated employment. And that's out there working in, I'm making air quotes here, a traditional job. That role can be supported with a job coach. Something else that's part of this is self-employment. I know a few self-advocate adults that create fantastic artwork and they sell it. So they are self-employed. Segregated employment still exists in Wisconsin. Oh, and I lost my spot. So segregated employment still exists in Wisconsin. And um, let's see, it's, sorry, I lost my notes. These are the positions where they might be working in something that looks like a manufacturing environment with some support. That's segregated employment. The downside, as some see it anyway, is that the hourly rate of our adult children earn there is almost always less than minimum wage. And this working environment is a subject of debate. Some states have phased them out. Some states still offer them. Wisconsin is one that still offers them. Day services. This is often for those that choose maybe not to work right now, or they want to work part-time and then have some social activities within the rest of their day. It's often all in one place. They'll work for half the day and spend the other half of the day maybe playing board games or doing other activities. But in all of these cases, these can be part-time or full-time. You can go from one to the other as their level of support that's needed might shift, or as their interests change. When it comes to integrated employment, which is that one that I mentioned was sort of like a traditional job, or at least what we may think of as a traditional job, there are multiple tools and supports available to help our kids be successful in those roles. And these supports can be coupled up together, like using DVR services plus family care or IRIS funds. Frankly, my son did that. DVR paid for a job developer to find a position he might enjoy, and Iris pays now for his job coach and his transportation. Vocational agencies can help with finding jobs, providing a job coach, any adaptive equipment that might be needed to do the job, trial job experiences. My son had a few of those, including an internship at a zoo, which he loved. Social Security does offer some work-based incentives, sort of initially minimizing the impact of some new income on SSI benefits, and offering benefits counselors to help adults sort of navigate all that and to help stitch these programs together.
You know,
Okay.
I was going to add, and I hope I'm not making this complicated, is that my son we weren't able to find a paid job for him. And so right now he has volunteer jobs. So DVR initially helped him find those positions, but because it's not paid, they have stepped away so that now Iris covers the cost of those job coaches and the support that he transportation, things like that. So I don't know if that's universal, but at least for us, unless he was moving towards a paid position, DVRs, those services did end. But again, they said, you know, if something changes, again, he's 22, so he's only been out, you know, a little over a year, that we can certainly reapply for DVR. We can, you know, it's not a, you know, it's not a forever sort of thing. So and again, I didn't realize that, you know, that there is that distinction. But for him, the volunteer job has really been great, and maybe that will at some point move into a paid position.
Thanks for sharing that, Lynn. And I think if you want to go on to the next slide, it's back to you.
Oh, thank you. So another big part of transition and adulthood is thinking about where your child will live. And obviously we all know this is a huge decision. It's not something that we necessarily need to do at age 18 or 21 or even 25. It's, you know, for many of us, our kids will live at home for a while, and then at some point, if they're ready or we're ready, that they will move out. So I'm actually just in the process of working on a fact sheet that will be available on our website very soon, because I felt like there really wasn't a lot out there to really think about, you know, what's in the community. So as this slide says, it's, you know, it's learning what's available, what's out there in your community, You can talk to the Aging and Disability Resource Center. You can talk to your family care team or your IRS consultant. There are also independent living centers and disability-specific organization like the Autism Society or Down Syndrome Association that I think can really be a great resource just to learn what are young adults doing, because that's really changing. So, as we said, it's really an individual and a family choice. And I know in some cultures they wouldn't, that the adult child will live at home for a long time, and in other cultures it's very appropriate that at 21 they will move out. So, but in terms of kind of the overview or the broad categories of living, there's what's called community supported living. And that's where the young adult is renting their own house or apartment, or owning a house with others. They have roommates. And very often you can get supportive agencies to come in if they need it. So, for some people that's 24/7. For some people that's just a check-in a few times a day, and then they can use technology. One of our other co-director's son lives at his own apartment with a friend, and then they have both an alert bracelet and some other technology. What is it called? Something owl. I can't remember what it's called. But in any case, if he needs something in the middle of the night, he can press the button and somebody will come right over. So there's out there, a lot out there in terms of the technology that would allow someone to live in the community. The other option, kind of generally speaking, are those regulated settings. So meaning that the Department of Health Services does, they have a listing of these homes and apartments, and they regulate those settings, and they go in and do inspections periodically. So those settings, something like an adult family home or a group home, what's called an RCAC, residential care apartment complexes, or CBRFs. So those are all, again, those are available throughout the state. And on the DHS website, they do have a listing of all those. But I think what some people have found is that means that that the person who's living there is not necessarily setting their own schedule. So if there is a time that everybody eats, that's when they eat. When there's a time when everyone goes to bed, or if everybody's going to the movie, that's, so I think, for some people that really works well. And for others, they want to have that more independence, in terms of living in their community. So finally, to kind of wrap up our training, we want you to think about, and we want your young adult to think about, how do they want to participate and be a part of their community? So for all of us, we need to think about, where do we find friends? Where do we find social connections? What do we want to do for fun and keep active, especially on cold nights like this, right? Does a young adult want to get politically active? Do they want to vote? Do they want to go, be an advocate? Do they want to volunteer or be a part of their faith community? So there's just so many things to think about. And as it says, to really stretch themselves, to continue to build self-advocacy and independence, and, think really broadly about how can they make their life a good life? And what can they do to find those connections? So I think we gave you guys a lot to think about. But I think one way to kind of start is to think about, what piece will you take on first? Do you really want to think about and learn about healthcare transition? Is it those, the family care and IRIS, or excuse me, sorry, I can't talk. Think about, rather than trying to take on everything at once, which I just think is overwhelming, kind of think about, what can you do first? And which partners can you bring on? And what information do you need? So I would say that's the way to start. And so we do have a wealth of information on our website. And Danielle, maybe you should take over because I'm getting froggy here. But we have this whole training as an on-demand video. So if you want to go back and watch it, and or fast forward and go to the pieces that you are most interested in, I would encourage you to do that. We also have a long resource list so that if you want to learn more about a specific thing, you can go to our resource list. And finally, talk to the high school, talk to the transition folks, and see what you can do to just learn more about all of these topics. Danielle, do you have any other words of wisdom?
I don't. Other than for those of you that are just starting this process of transition, give yourself grace. There's many steps that are in different places, but it's all doable. It's all manageable. And I think that the hints and tips that are offered throughout this workshop and just with being staying connected to, frankly, your school district are going to be really helpful.
Well, thank you both. And we do have time for some questions. So be thinking of those questions. You can unmute and raise your hand, or unmute and I'll call on you, or put your questions in the chat. But I wanted to remind people that this is just the first overview of the Transition Talks Tuesdays series. We will be digging a little bit more into a whole session on supported decision-making and guardianship. We're going to learn about the Aging Disability Resource Centers. We're going to talk more about healthcare transition, looking ahead to special needs, financial planning, the role of DDR that we had talked about a little bit before, and dig a little bit more into employer panel and what employers are around the Columbus School District area. So we hope that you'll come back for future ones as we dig into some of these topics. Any questions?
This is Jennifer Keys. I have a question.
Sure, Jennifer.
My question is, back at the beginning when it was talking about least restrictive to the more restrictive types of transition into adulthood. So you got your supportive decision-making, agreement, representative, power of attorney, and then guardianship. And the comment was made that if you're not sure where to start in the least restrictive before you go to guardianship, which is the most restrictive. But my question is doesn't guardianship have to be done when they're 18 though? I mean, how could you do least restrictive and then
It doesn't actually. There's no. I mean, at the you can't do it any younger than age 18. But if you want to wait till they're 19, 20, 21, and it seems appropriate, you can do that. But that's my understanding, is it doesn't have to be done at age 18.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Right. So you can start. I mean, we know that every kid's brain develops at its own rate. And what science is telling us is that a lot of the brain is not ready for that decision making anyway until 25, no matter if you have a disability or not. Our decision making will be wonky up until then. And so being able to start safely with supported decision making agreements, powers of attorney, maybe joint bank accounts, to see not just level where the person's at, but also as they grow, because we all continue to grow. And then if it becomes a safety issue, then you can petition for guardianship at any time.
And I would
Okay.
add that release of information too is
Yes.
probably really, really important, right? So they continue to talk to school and their doctors and their bank and the
especially with
hospital. So that release
especially with the
information.
medicals. You are
Right.
absolutely right, Lynn.
And you can have that with the least restrictive, as long as I guess he
Right. He is in charge of he
Yeah.
is saying that he wants help. He is saying he wants you to help him figure out maybe navigate what somebody is saying or what it means, but he's the one still making those decisions. But the release of information, if they sign it and you're allowed to get information, then allows you to attend appointments with them, make the appointments for them, talk to the doctors if you have any questions. Like sometimes my son will come home and they'll say something and I'll be like, really? That's what the doctor said? And then I can go back and I can ask the doctor, okay, this is what I was told. What did you really mean? And I can't do that without a release of information.
Oh, okay. Sure, sure. Okay. Great. Thank you for that explanation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is Diane. So I'm 70, my husband and I are 70, and we're on Medicare, and our adoptive son is on Forward Health, and he'll be 18 in June, and he's only a junior in high school. Big concern on health insurance. His disabilities are mostly emotional. So I'm not sure what disabilities you are exactly talking about, but how do we maneuver this with us not having insurance that he can stay on when we're on Medicare?
I might talk to the ADRC, or what do you think, Tim? The regional center,
Yeah.
the Children's Resource Center, because I know
Yeah,
there are.
you can call the Children's Resource Center and we can try to talk that through. That's a really good, that's a really good question. I haven't had anybody ask it before. ADRCs may have an answer because they know Medicaid, and Medicare much better than the resource centers do. But let me go ahead and put in your resource center's contact information, and you can call and talk to a resource guide, and we may be able to find out some more information about that for you. So I'll drop that into the chat.
Okay, well, I'm on the phone, so I can't see anything.
Oh my goodness, that's great. Okay, so do you want to write down the email address and you can email your question to us?
Or I can give you my email.
Hey, that'll work too. And then I will email you.
Yeah.
I will email you the contact information. Okay. Go. Well, actually, what was your name again, Diane?
Diane Bean13
Bean.
at Hotmail.
Okay, I will email you, Diane, with some contact information and ideas about people to contact.
Thank you. And the disabilities you're all talking about, is it emotional as well as physical?
In my opinion, yes, but it does get tricky depending on the supports in the agencies. Is the system does not always recognize emotional disability at the same level of physical disability, just like it doesn't recognize all physical disabilities at the same level of care. One of the things that I'll email you about is, depending on his situation, is if he is connected to the CCS program, because the CCS program is for people that are struggling with some mental health challenges, and it extends into adulthood. So I want to make sure that you can talk to our resource guides about that program too, and see if that might be an option as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
There was a question in chat. When applying for Social Security, do they go off the parent's income?
That is a big difference between the day before they turn age 18 and when they turn 18. Because the day they turn 18, it is their own income and assets. So, I mean, I was going to say to the other person, that's how my son was able to stay on. He was on Katie Beckett. They're on Medicaid through Katie Beckett, but age 18, he was able to move. Well, actually, I think Katie Beckett goes through 19, but basically he applied, or I applied for him for SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and through qualifying for SSI, he gets Medicaid. So, right, that's a big distinction. So that, right, I think in what Danielle talked about, that even if your child is on SSI as it, under age 18, they'll need to reapply and go through the adult qualifications and the adult enrollment process.
Any other questions before we return you all to your chilly Tuesday night? Well, thank you all very much for being here. Let me just double check the chat really quick. There we go. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Danielle and Lynn. Julia, did you have any final words?
I mean, I'm going to say no and then I'm going to talk. But no, just thank you so much to Lynn and Danielle. It was a pleasure to virtually meet you. I hope to connect with you at some point again soon. I do have some questions that I'll probably be emailing you about as well. But to all of you who are on the meeting tonight, thank you again. And I hope to see you on our next meeting, which is the 30th, I believe.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will be the 30th. We will be having a parent and an attorney in to talk about supported decision-making and guardianship. I've heard him before. He's a friend of mine. He has an interesting story as well as a technical background. So I hope you can join us. Hopefully you registered. It will be the same link. So just feel free to rejoin if you would like. Thank you all so much for being here. If anybody has questions they don't want recorded, hang on. I'm just going to stop the recording. Maybe. I may not stop the recording. There we go.